Good evening, everyone. This is the March co-curricular athletics and pupil personnel meeting. I have the entire administrative staff here, along with board members, Mr. Geithner and Saviano. Ms. Corman is running, Ms. Alvarez is running a few minutes late, but we have a packed agenda, so we will get started with her permission. First up on the agenda is a curriculum document. Ms. Vasco is yours. Algebra 2, please take it.
So the document this time is going to be Algebra 2. Remember last month we did dynamics of Algebra 2 and I had said there was still one more that was just had to be tweaked a little bit. To give you a little bit of background of Algebra 2, it is the continuation of Algebra 1. The standards full algebra kind of all is one shot. The topics that are included in this would be, it's a lot of different functions. It's basically rational functions, irrational complex numbers, quadratic functions, polynomial, radical and inverse, exponential, logarithmic. It basically does all of the types of equations and functions that you need to do any type of advanced math going through. It is really the foundation of every other class that you have moving forward. To give you an idea of some of the updates going through, they added in the 2020 career readiness and like literacy skills. In terms of the cross-curricular, it was updated to be 2023 language arts standards that we use because they're all word patterns that we're using going through. A few standards were included for the 2020 computer science and design. We did include some of the science practices. The science standards were very science oriented in terms of experiments and things like that, but we did go through and found some science and engineering practices that do include math skills going through with it. And then the WIDA, which is the English language development for the math component of that. These are all like mandates of things that they want in terms of adding through. Give you an idea of some of the standards that we use with the practices. Asking questions, defining problems. It's an engineering tech or thought process, but it is something that's used in mathematics. Developing and using models, analyzing, interpreting data, using mathematics and computational thinking, constructing explanations, and obtaining and evaluating and communicating information. So if you think of the cross connection between science and math, these are skills that they can practice as they're doing word practice that will then transfer over when they're doing the sciences at that time. In each of the new documents, we have added tier 2 and tier 3 words in terms of vocabulary. Vocabulary has always been very strong in the mathematics courses, but this is now kind of highlighting it in terms of the curriculum documents. In terms of the stage 2, there's been some updated assessments and things that just kind of things they've been doing. What's nice is that it's very user friendly to the teachers going through because the stage 2 and the stage 3 are set for the teachers' use, and so it can get very detailed. Stage 3 is where it's really the day-to-day lessons going through, and they've updated and made them much more enhanced than they were in the past. In terms of the changes from 2016 to 2023 standards, there were some topics that were extremely advanced. At one time, the state thought should be put into the Algebra 2. They were putting anything and everything into the Algebra 2 and making it very compact. They've now made several of those. They consider them optional concepts, not for an Algebra 2 class, but for mathematics as they're going through. And really what they do is most of them transfer over to a pre-calculus class. So to give you an idea, I actually did highlight some of those. And you would see going through, it would make sense going through. It's trigonometric functions where it's graphing, modeling, periodic phenomena was specific to amplitude, frequency, and midline. That is 100% a pre-calc topic. Radian measure is not something you would need in an Algebra 2 class, and it's always been taught together. These are things they thought at one time they should be in it, but they've now taken them out. Pythagorean identity, which I'm not sure if you know what that means, but that would be like sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1, and then all of the identities that matter. Again, 100% pre-calc topic. So it's not as if these things are not being taught. They're not mandated for a graduation, and then if you go on to the pre-calculus courses, you would definitely get those going through. So that's why if you take a look at the two documents, there have been a few things that have been dwindled out, and those are because those were extra things that really didn't need, and they didn't get the type of time they really need to develop them, and it was across the board because you just didn't have time to do that with everything else going through. So I'm very happy that the state was very smart in terms of that. And other than that, it really was, like I said, a lot of just adding and enhancing and making things better, and then updating to all of the standards and the cross-curricular of the state. So are there any questions?
2 quick questions. So this is updated for the coming school year, or because we're kind of different now?
So because the standards of 2023, we've been doing this anyway because When
The
the
document-
standards came out, they weren't completely adopted, but we knew in 2023, Kelly and I did, Dr. Rizzo and I did in terms of what they were. We had a lot of meetings with the department and we talked about all of the changes that they were. You would meet the needs of the standards regardless of the document being totally updated to it, but it was a good time to update it. They were truly technically adopted this August for this school year, but they call them 2020 because that was when they were ready to have them through, they just haven't gone.
The part that are being kind of swindled out, like you said, which not really technically required to graduate from the class. So are you guys still?
They were just touched on in the past, and so now we were talking, when we talked 2 years ago, we said, the good thing is that these are things that we know are really done and done well in the pre-calculus class. You can now spend your time on the things that they have to get down and they have to master. So it definitely has helped it.
And would you remind me, we did dynamics and we did the honors algebra to have, we did algebra too. So
This is our, we did dynamics about it. We have not done honor type.
which is left to update 2023 standards still?
So the course is updated, but the document is not.
Okay, the
We
document,
have,
okay.
I have probably, I don't know the exact number, but 23, 25 different documents, and we update a certain number each year going through.
So that's not in the plans for this year? The
It
honors?
is not the plans for this school year.
Okay.
It could be for next school year.
Okay, but it will be updated to 2023 standards because that's the latest.
So the course itself will be updated. The teachers will be teaching it to the 2023 standards. In terms of the document, we have so many that we do in Jira.
Okay, anybody else, any questions?
Comment?
Yeah, of course.
Nice job.
Okay. No concerns, no.
No,
comments.
it's just a great job, and I
Thank
love
you,
reading this stuff, because my background is math, so, you know,
You speak my language, right?
I just say, wow, it really does. So, very nicely done.
Coming from Mr. Zeichner, that's sure the compliment.
Thank you. The math teachers in the district are very, very good about knowing what they have to get done and going through it. And part of it is when you start teaching, you're teaching in a tested area and you've never known anything different. So there is no option to not finish a curriculum or not teach something going through. They work very, very well together. They have their own personalities, sometimes in terms of how they address things, but they do work well in terms of how they cover things and make sure the final that we have is a department final. So which says a lot to it, that means they have all talked and they've all communicated. In the end, this is what we want going through.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, we have a very exciting update on science. Ms. Rust, all yours.
Good evening, everyone. I want to share with you an important update that we're going to be following in the steps of advanced DLA.
Very excited.
And a couple of years ago, we were tasked by Dr. Chanley to try to see if we can bring an advanced science program beginning in the 8th grade. So after looking at various criteria, trying to examine how we can best meet those needs for those students, we have a 2-phase process that we are going to be engaging in to be able to determine students who would meet eligibility to participate in this program beginning in September of next year. Phase 1 criteria would be based off of a point system using 5 criteria: their MAP growth score in math, their MAP growth score in DLA, their NJSLA subscore for reading informational text, which obviously is very important for science, their current 7th grade science average, as well as a 7th grade common assessment that will be given to all students, with parents having the opportunity, if they do not wish for their student to participate, they do not have to. Each student will be given various numbers of points depending on how they fall within these 5 criteria. If they meet the necessary amount of points, they will move on to phase 2. Phase 2 will involve 2 parts: a technical writing piece, and we are very excited that we will have a team of teachers from the middle school and myself that will be asking students to engage in an authentic science performance task to see how well are they able to actually do science, follow directions, work as a group, identify different scientific tools. All of this will be done by rubric. So we would expect phase one that we will be administering that seventh grade common assessment towards the end of March. Phase two, we would look at May to be able to start looking at those students who would move on with parents being notified. For the following year, this summer, we will work on curriculum, which eventually we will present to you.
This is beyond exciting. Thank you for all the minds that have gone into this. And so you just mentioned March, and this is in the next 2-3 weeks, you're going to be administering phase one.
Correct.
And phase one is for all students.
Phase one is for all students. I do want to give the public service announcement now because I know it's the question that everyone's going to get.
Yes.
We will be sending a letter home to all parents, but it is very important that for this seventh grade science common assessment, there is no way to study for it. It is not something that
You can say it all you want.
We're really just looking to see how do students perform on critical thinking and even engaging with material that they might see in a new way that they haven't necessarily seen in their classroom presented in that exact manner. This will be done via the Linkit assessment system. It will be on computers. And again, all students are open to test. We will be following all necessary testing accommodations that students have, so parents don't need to worry about that, such as after time. All of that is built into this. If a parent does, however, not show an interest that they want their child to participate in the assessment, they can opt out of it.
No, it's very important. And I know that despite all the PSAs, people will still be scrambling to, there's not enough time, I gotta study, but what this program really, in my understanding, is doing is meeting some of those high caliber students where they are. It's not to ask people.
Correct.
It's to address the need and the opportunity, and which is great. So, and that leads me to my question. What is this going to look like in 8th grade? I did ask Dr. Lehman that, but for the public nature of this meeting, I would like to.
So we will still be meeting all of the 8th grade science standards. However, the approach of how we will be meeting them will be slightly different in that it will involve some more high-level critical thinking skills. Students really need to be able to be independent thinkers. These are some of the, skills that we really look for, especially as we progress up in honors and AP programs. So we're really looking for those students who can, let's say, think about an experiment and say, you know what if I tried it this way? Or look at data and be able to put it together and synthesize it on a very high level. So we will still be teaching about cells, but perhaps we're looking at a holistic situation where those students are then analyzing a particular disease and how that all relates. Again, this is stuff that all of our students are exposed to. It's just a product that we're looking for at the end that will be slightly different.
And they won't be pulled out. It's a separate
Regular
section of
it's a-
advanced
yeah.
science students. Anybody else has any questions for Ms. Rust?
I'd like to just make a comment.
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to thank Ms. Drust, and appropriately, I want to say the same thank you to Dr. Roselle. So about 3 or 4 years ago, when I first took on this position, one of the things I was very passionate about was that we needed to have a talented and gifted program, which is what we called it, or the acceleration for all content areas. We've had mathematics as far as the accelerated program for many, many, many years. And I always thought, well, what about the other areas? And we were always told it couldn't be done, it couldn't be done. Well, it can be done, and I want to thank, like I said, Dr. Roselle started out. I was very excited about the advanced ELA. Didn't know what it was going to look like. Fantastic job. It's now on its second year. And then Ms. Drust and I had spoken quite a few times, and all we kept on saying was, and plus Dr. Lehman was involved, we kept saying, what's it going to look like? She's like, you got to give me time. I'm not really sure. We have to see how this works. And she did it. We had a meeting about it last week. Very excited. I think this is awesome because as the public should know, but I will say it aloud, the reason why I didn't compliment Ms. Gasco, she's already complimented because it's been here forever. So Ms. Gasco, we've had accelerated math for many, many years. I believe it starts in the 5th grade.
Yes.
Starts in the 5th grade, and it's something we've always had. I never understood why we didn't have it for other content areas. And then when we looked at the talented and gifted, as per the state of New Jersey, it really should be within the school day. It should not be separate after school. So it's one of the things we did. So I want to say thank you to everyone, because I know success is a team effort, and I'm very excited. Very excited.
Just want to say one more quick thing. I just again want to reiterate, the students are going to be exposed to the same material. What we're really looking for are students who are prepared to go deeper, and have that prerequisite skills to be able to do so. And that's really what we're looking for.
And it's okay if they don't, and it's okay if they wind up
if they do
in
not.
the regular science class, and that's all right. And yes, you cannot study, nor should you be asking your child to study, because that is not the point of really looking at the various different children.
And you guys have really talked this through, and this is very exciting that like you said, the parent communication is probably going on soon. That's going to be a key part of trying to control the chaos which comes with anything new that we try to introduce in our school system. There are people that are going to be super excited. There are people that are going to have a million questions. So if we can proactively address that with a good piece of communication upfront that checks all the boxes of information, that would be great. And, as always, we will encourage parents to watch this meeting, to hear you in person. And good luck. This is, great things are coming here. I personally have been that parent that has pulled out my kids from tag in middle school because I didn't want to punish them by, having them stay after school and miss sports and clubs and other things. So after having shut that down, we're now actually starting great programs within the school day. Yes, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Ms. Bora. Just with regards to parent communication, so all communications that get sent out by the supervisors regarding these types of programs, whether they be the informational videos for accelerated math or Dr. Rozelle's videos for advanced ELA or cluster or anything like that, there is a dedicated space on our website now. So the material that Ms. Russ will produce will be memorialized in that location, which is under the curriculum tab on our website, and there's a dedicated space for gifted and talented services. So in addition to the correspondence, which will be mailed, they will be settled there, so you can go back for a future one.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that reminder, Mr. Monroe. Again, exciting the progress that we've made with even the website. Next on the agenda, I'm sorry, Ms. Russ, are you done?
I am done.
Is high school clubs, Dr. Plela, it's all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So we're going to present 3 new clubs for the board's consideration, curriculum committee's consideration. Before I do that, I'd be remiss not to go over just a little bit of history. So we had an old system. Dr. Chanley and a prior board shared some concerns with Dr. Higgins and I, and we decided to change the system. Under the old system, we had 2 primary problems. One of which was when to or how to budget for clubs if club applications were coming in on an on-rolling basis. So they would come in throughout the school year, and it was really hard to figure out what we needed budgetarily for those clubs they were approved. The second was the old system really didn't go into too much depth when it came to information, what the club was going to do, its mission, its goals, how would they, have meetings, what types of things they would do during the meeting. So we took a look at it. That's the old application. Dr. Higgins and I sat down and we came up with a new scheme. Just to be brief, we kind of figured out the budget situation by having a window of application. Window of application for new clubs begins in September and ends the day before winter break. So kids would submit their applications. Back then it was a paper and pencil kind of application. We've since made it a Google Doc, which is time-stamped, it's typed, it's easily legible. Kids would then fill out the application. That's the second problem we were dealing with. We made the application a little bit more detailed as to what the club really, what the essence of it was. Because a lot of times kids have this great idea, but they don't sit down and really think it through. So what is it going to look like? What are we going to do? What kind of difference are we going to make in the school community? So we fixed that application to include some of these questions, which go into some of the ideas I just mentioned. Any questions with regard to the old system or new system? Okay. So this year, we received 18 applications. This is all of these are all the applications we received this year. Next slide is applications we did not want to push or bring to your attention, but again, I want to make sure that we have transparency here, and these are the clubs that were proposed. The first three are a little bit different than the rest on this page. From Resoap down to Future Cities at the high school. Those particular clubs can be addressed within our existing club infrastructure. We have about 60 clubs right now at the school, so it's really hard to find something that we really need that's a little different than what we already have. So the first three, though, were interesting. The first one being the Alumni Network. Dr. Higgins and I are going to look a little bit more into that, talk to the board at a later date about maybe some budgetary options, because I think it's something that would really help out our school community with regard to bringing alumni back for purpose of scholarships, internships, just guest speakers, role models. I mean, there's always a need for the alumni to come back and contribute. The American Sign Language is the second one. We're going to reevaluate that when we bring it into our curriculum. I think that's another great one that we can have another, I'm not sure if that would be under you, Dr. Rozelle, but we'll have to see. Yep. And then the third one, I've been talking to Mr. Snyder about the indoor percussion. That's something that we're also going to do, but through the music program and not so much through the clubs. This next slide has a bunch of clubs on it that didn't have an advisor. So the kids were very excited to propose these clubs. But for one reason or another, they weren't able to find an advisor. The high school Republicans had an advisor early on. I believe that young gentleman was here and stating his views. That person that was supposed to do it backed out. He couldn't find anyone else, so he said he was going to try to apply again next year. So these are the three we would like the curriculum committee to consider. There's two religious-based organizations, and third is more of ethnic organization. The Coptic Club, as well as the Hindu Student Association, as everyone knows, we have a very large Coptic community in and around this area, as well as the Hindu community. Students want these clubs, again, to just have a place where they can talk about their faith, as well as other people of other faiths coming to these clubs to learn a little bit about it. Not many people know too much about Coptic religion, for example, so they might want to attend that particular group just to sit down and just have some questions asked. We have a Sikh community organization, we have a Christian organization, we have an Islam, we have a Jewish organization. So we want to make sure that everyone feels that, you know, they're represented and they have a forum to, you know, just to celebrate their who they are and their backgrounds are. Okay. The third, again, very similar. It's an ethnic-based club here at the school. It's going to be headed up by one of our teachers, Mr. Alpacano. He was really pushing this. We have a pretty decent-sized Filipino, number of students here at the school, and they really wanted this. They were hoping to get it in October because that is the Filipino Pride Month. So assuming it does get passed, they'll be able to do so on a probationary level. Any questions with regards to the clubs we are not pushing forward and the clubs we are?
The AI club, you couldn't find an advisor?
Couldn't find an advisor.
What was the goal of that?
And that was another thing for it. I wasn't quite sure they wanted to just discuss AI and kind of, I guess, have different guest speakers speak about it. And I referenced them to the computer club. Our computer club's pretty good. It kind of adapts to the kids' needs. One year, they're very code-focused. Another year, they're very gaming-focused. And then he's kind of branched out and has different sections within the club for different kids' interests, because computer club obviously is many different things that go into it. There was one year where they were really into the hardware aspect of it. So it's kind of changed.
So that club does exist, a computer.
Oh, yeah,
club,
yeah.
And you're right, then this could easily
It could
fall
be-
in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'll move on. Clubs removed. So we're adding 3, we're removing 4. The American Legion Oratorical, I've been discussing that with Ms. Drust, and we're thinking about possibly creating a liaison who would kind of oversee this. So it would not only be the oratorical, it would also be the boys and girls state programs. So that's a really big undertaking. We're hoping that we can possibly find a teacher who can work with our local American Legions in that respect. Because the American Legion Oratorical, we typically get maybe 2 or 3 kids at most. 2, 3 was a lot to participate in this program. So it was hard to justify, continuing the stipend in that sense. Photography is very similar. It's kind of, I mean, everyone has a phone now, so the kids can just, I mean, in that way, yes, you could do something, but there's not the same interest as it once was. So that's something that's going to be disbanded. Gay Straight Alliance and Peace Ambassadors traditionally and historically have always been connected. That goes back to the original advisor who found it both at the same time. So she would have one meeting and then the next day would have the next meeting. Sometimes she would bring the kids together to do different events. And that kind of, since she's left, those two advisors kind of do everything together, but the clubs are so small that we've decided to consolidate them, and we wanted, with the board's approval, call this new club the Peace and Pride Alliance. It kind of takes a little aspect from each of those clubs and brings them together. They have very similar kind of missions, so we're hoping that can happen. The fourth one, I'm sorry, the entrepreneurship. There was no advisor this year, and the club kind of died a natural death. So unfortunately, I mean, anybody can.
Surprised, like, we've got so many kids taking these business classes and you're filling those,
Too busy.
but nobody wants to do this?
I think with FBLA and DECA,
Yeah,
those
that's what
kind
I
of needs are.
And the other old, Amtrak, what is that program? Is that related?
It's an honors marketing class.
Is that not related?
We're so heavily involved in curriculum with this
That's why
that
nobody wants to
students
do
do
it.
something else after school.
Yes,
They don't
that
do the
makes
things that
sense.
they're doing. Photography club, our photography program, curricular is huge. They don't want to do photography after they're doing it.
That makes sense.
So you see the things that they're looking to do after school are those ideas that they can't get during the day.
Which speaks volumes to the opportunities that we've added into our curriculum that these are not needed after school. That's great.
And
Much
just
the
for
same
point
way
of
as
clarity,
we're-
I'm sorry,
Middle school.
Mr. Colella. So for example, to follow on what Dr. Higgins just pointed out with the EIC or Entrepreneurship and Innovation Club, the opportunities that club presented will still be available through the Entrex course, which is still exists in our course catalog. You know, we get when, depending on student recommendations and, student requests and things like that. So that course and those opportunities that program brought are still available to students if they enroll in that course.
Excellent.
And I just have one last slide. This club is going to be on probation for the next school year. It's a Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. And the only reason we'd like to put this on, well, two reasons. One of which the attendance isn't that great. And they haven't really been competing in the last few years. And the purpose of the club is, Smeralda, he was one of the first proponents of this club. They would go and compete every year and we would do really well. We've since lost that advisor and we're trying to get this new advisor, kind of up to speed with that. It's been kind of difficult because we don't have the same kind of student bodies we once did.
And to that club in relationship to our program's evolution. So if I can give you an example, one of the big draws from that club was it offered some competition for our students in our culinary program.
Oh, I was gonna ask what kind of competition.
However, we would go down there, but it would be so what we do here, using gas stoves and restaurant equipment, they would go to like a hotel lobby and like do like plating. So which is still viable experiences, but again, our curricular programs were offering more experiences. They go get more action preparing for the Teacher of the Year reception than they would. Now, there are still other benefits that the FCCLA offers in other areas, but from Monroe's perspective, the big draw had always been the culinary and the fashion aspects, which our programs kind of outpaced what that club was offering to the Monroe learner. And I think that really impacted the draw of and the appeal and shine of that club to the Monroe student.
So our students in the culinary or the fashion classes, are they, through the courses in school, are they taking part in any competitions that are worthy of their skill set?
So not so much as we used to. And I think part of that has become that those areas have become less hobbyish, if that's a word, and really more career focused.
Yeah.
And whereas the approach to, let's say, the culinary sequence, and the state deserves really the credit for this because they guided this through the Office of for Technical Education. Whereas fashion maybe in the 1990s was more like, hey, that sounds fun. Whereas now it's more like, I'm going to take this course for 3 years in a row because I want to go to that fun. Or Dr. Higgins and I were just celebrating that I think we had like 154 students certified with CertFaith certification through Culinary 2 program, which is an industry level certification that you need to work in the kitchen. You know, so our students are finding, they seem to be more interested in that. And you see that through their participation and enrollment in FCCLA, which I wish there was a way for both of them. We have looked at like Skills USA, which is an alternative to that, which is often in other districts. But, you know, again, these clubs that Mr. Colella pointed out are really student driven, and we've been pretty responsive if they want something. So if they come calling, we'll probably come up with something.
All good reasons for these things now, that's, so far, except for the few that didn't find an advisor, but
Yeah.
most of all, yeah.
It's getting tougher and tougher because the teachers, there's not many teachers or, you know, we have left there. So many are advising or coaching right now. It's kind of hard for the kids to find someone, but we do have so many different opportunities pre-existing right now that people will find their way and able to, you know, find someone and other folks just like them share their interests. So, are there any questions?
Yes, Charlie.
Yeah, how are these clubs funded? Do they just fundraise themselves?
So, so depending on what they're trying to do, so let's say we can use, let's say the SCCLA, if they want to fundraise, we have a whole system in place. For applying for a fundraiser, then Dr. Higgins and I have to look at that particular proposal. And then any monies that are raised are, you know, then deposited within our you know, in our student activities account. So there's a bunch of different checkboxes that they have to do in order to do it, but even the fundraising approval form, they have to tell us what they're doing it for. Typically, we see scholarships. It could be to fundraise for a trip somewhere, things of those nature.
So what about if they need funds to start up the club? Is that available to them?
It typically isn't, and we don't really have too many that need it. And if there are, what we ask is that we know of this and then we can try to budget for it. One of the clubs on the list was the Science Olympiad. Ms. Dress and I sat down, we were thinking about trying to get some funding for it for the upcoming school year, but the kids never came through with an advisor, so we didn't push it through. Had they had that advisor in place, we would have budgeted. That particular club needs some, you know, some startup costs because they have to, you know, buy all these materials in order to compete in that sense.
Because the Coptic Club,
And some of the clubs also have dues. Dr. Higgins also reminded me of that.
okay,
Yeah.
because the Coptic Club is indicating, so they need to loan out money to purchase food and clothing, which we will sell, which is, I mean, the clubs are great. They're wonderful. The money that we will borrow will be returned back to the school.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, you might.
I talked to them about that, yeah.
You might want to.
They had the wrong name.
Yeah. It's the students, a lot of time, students are filling these out, and they take great pride in it, because a lot of times it's their first foray into board of education, so they'll come down periodically and check them, have you presented to the board, have you presented, so they're vested, and it's good, it's a learning experience for them, but they soon realize that there's a lot of things they have to do before it's done the correct way. So like I said, it's a good experience for them in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I just make one comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Colella, I know it's not feasible now, but perhaps maybe the following year, if you could, if the children come forward to go into Science Olympiad, it's something that I started in the middle school, and it's extremely successful. They go and they compete, and they have a lot of opportunities. The children have a lot of opportunities. I don't know if it would be feasible, depending on the schedule, if you wanted to work with Dr. Higgins, if you could get someone who'd be willing to be an advisor in the high school from the middle school, if they had, like, say, the last period as a prep, they might be able to do that, only because it's such an incredible program. It's something that was started, I guess maybe 7 years ago. It's a great opportunity, because they do it at the middle school and they have success with it. So when you see a competitive club that's successful at the middle school, it's great when you see it at the high school. We wound up making it, we removed it from the club area and put it into, because our clubs also are mandated by child interest, but we went ahead and changed it to somewhere in the contract where it's separate, almost like Builders Club. So it becomes a stipend versus a club advisor.
Got it.
So it's, if you wanted to chat about it, just because it's so successful in the middle school, they feed up, so why not look at that?
And the reason was the advisor, right? Here,
Yes, that was the
only
reason,
we
yeah.
have.
So that maybe you could work something out, you never know.
I think it's a little tough because, for that particular club, there is a big, time investment. It's a lot of travel.
Yes, travel.
So on a high school level, it might be looks a little bit different than the middle school.
Yep,
So people were kind of a little apprehensive about taking that particular position.
but you might have someone who's already an advisor at the middle school, of course not double dipping, on a different day or a different time, that's already used to that because they also do the travel in the middle school. And, you know, we always try and, you know, we work this way, so you always try and work it out. You never know. They might have prep at the last period of the day, which would be your last class
Mhm.
when your school ends. No, you don't
I
know.
mean, Melissa Chalmers are math honor society person, so like, we're definitely open to that.
Yeah, you never know.
That's a possibility, absolutely.
That'd be great, so, but I
Do
was
we have
excited.
student interest here in high school for that?
We have, 3 kids that are really pushing for it here. They really want it. I think one is a senior, gonna be a senior next year. So she really wanted it, but I'm sure it's something that's already at the middle school will continuously have this inquiry and question about it.
To start a club, you need 30 signatures, 30 interested, but once the club is running, then it's whoever enrolls.
Exactly, but right now we do have science leads, that's our oldest
Oh,
club here at the
okay.
school. And that's, again, they compete against other schools, and that's higher level, I mean, these are, you know, they're going, physics ADs going against other physics AD kids, and it's really high level, science,
And they're very successful.
yeah.
Yeah, so there you go, so push them in that direction.
That's what I've been doing, yeah, and I feel bad because they really wanted this club, but we just didn't, they didn't get the advisor.
What is the total count of clubs after these 3 are approved and those 4 are taken?
I would have to, it's about 60 this quarter, yeah,
60.
yeah.
I have to say that my first year on the board was the old process, and then.
Yep.
So this is fabulous. You know, the chaos earlier where we were doing a lot of asking of questions that is now right on your form. It's easy to read through and get those answers. And our job is easier. We can do it all in one meeting. So this is definitely a huge, you know, improvement in the process. And the students are also learning to stick to,
Yeah.
you know, the winner. It's a life lesson for them, that the period.
And we will continue working with you and Dr. Shanley on other things that you might want to see. We can definitely work on that.
No, they did a great job.
Yeah, the only thing that I feel about this process is a lot of times these kids wake up in their senior year and want to do something leadership related. Well, that timeline doesn't suit them. They have to act in the junior year to get that club up and functional while they're seniors, right?
I'm sorry.
Would it-
We also, we found that a couple of years ago to be almost problematic, because when you, in the old process, you
And when
had
you-
people saying, I want this club, they would start it, and I'm the president of this club, and then never meet, but they would have that on their resume, I'm the
I think
president of
this is
this
a
club.
good
So
way to
this
way to
makes
filter
it,
that out.
the process that we put in place, actually makes it meaningful
Yeah.
and adds to the longevity of those clubs for future students.
Yeah, yes, agree. I think all in all, this has been a great improvement to the process.
I do want, if you don't mind, I would just like to recognize and acknowledge Mr. Colella and the work that he does in the school for our clubs. He is the advisor for our clubs here at the high school. And this is not just the process that he does every March. You should see him running around with a clipboard on Tuesdays and Thursdays, taking attendance on what clubs are there and how many kids are in there. So he does a really good job for us, and I just wanted to acknowledge the work that he does.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Colella. The 60 Club, it could not be easy, and given the kind of, you know, the excitement and
Really, it's a positive part of my, big positive part of my day, because we deal with many different issues all day as
this is good,
administrators.
this is a good problem.
We're
huh?
all celebrating stuff. This is kids doing great stuff.
This is a good problem for you to
Good
have.
problem.
Well, thank you. This is definitely a good part of our work also approving these clubs. So I assume nobody has any issues with the 3 clubs that we are approving tonight. Congratulations to all the students that put the application in and gave the, you know, have the advisors supporting them.
Yeah. He'll be up.
Oh, Marietta has.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I always say that you're in charge of everything.
I'm not.
I don't know. I had one, but I used it. I did have one, but I used it myself. I just put it on with the call.
All right, so,
Okay.
that was it about the clubs. Like I said, congratulations to the 3 clubs that were approved tonight. Moving on, we have the summer programming update. Mr. Moralda, it'll be you, just Mr. Moralda.
Mr. Rowland, start and then we can have.
Okay,
Sure, just a very brief update.
Let's say very
We've,
brief.
we've spent, the early part of, or the latter part, I should say, of the winter, preparing for our newest initiative, which is, our summer advancement program, which Ms. Gaskell and I have designed. And we have, had tremendous response as expected. We have pre-approved, up to our capacity, which we are able to hold. And at this point, we are just giving those families the opportunity to kind of shore up their plans. But we've been appreciative of the way that the community has been following Ms. Gaskell's very strict protocols, receiving pre-approval. And we are very excited. We are well over 80% at capacity. And so we are excited about
That's very
that, what that really means for us. You know, not just enrichment services as an initiative, but also what it
Absolutely.
means that, you know, it's a clear win for the district and the
Yeah.
community and our teachers, and we are staff, we are excited about that, with plenty of time to make sure that this is a very worthwhile and valuable experience. And this is very important to remind, you know, this is, if this doesn't get delivered with fidelity, you know, that we're setting ourselves up for a challenge. So the expectation for these teachers, these math teachers, is to conduct a very rigorous and accountable experience, and we're looking forward to that. We're going to get started pretty early in the summer.
can I ask you a question
Yeah,
about this?
ma'am.
One, I have no doubt that the teachers are going to just do great and the students do. What is the price point that we did decide on this?
The price point we settled on was $1,750.
That's an excellent price point. compared to-
We're very happy
Very
with that.
competitive.
And we put a lot of thought into that, and, you know, out of respect for the community, but also we wanted to make sure that we are able to deliver this program properly, and that we are able to, out of respect to the district and to the business operations, not bring any financial liability to the district. And it's the same approach we take.
So it's a win-win.
Yes. And while these programs and motivation for these programs are not financially driven, the fact that they do bring in revenue allows us to engage in this type of programmatic development, which in a zero-based budget mindset that we've been in since I've been here. This is very important for us to maintain our competitive edge as a district. And the success of these types of programs, while obviously our number one priority is to deliver that academic experience that gives our kids an advantage, the fact that they do so without any financial liability for the district is I think is a principle of practice that I think is going to stick with public education indefinitely moving forward, and we need to prepare ourselves for that in these tough times with inflationary rates that are going to be unmanageable, particularly as programs become more complex and more expensive, and the services assigned a lot of times unfunded mandates are going to put our creative abilities in serious jeopardy. So these types of programs are very critical, so much so that we've been receiving several inquiries from outside districts for how we are doing it and how they could actually adopt our model in moving forward so they could follow suit, which is tremendous compliment, obviously. In addition,
Unfunded mandate either. No unfunded mandate.
No.
We don't like that.
we do not like that. Let's be clear, unfunded, every time there's an unfunded mandate that this district needs to adhere to, the opportunity cost is something new. Whether it be refining something that we already have, bringing it up to speed, whether, you know, through a new text series or a new curriculum design project, or implementing new technologies or infrastructure. You know, and as we know, the state is not sensitive to how that impacts Monroe specifically. So these programs, not only do they give our kids an edge because we hire certified teachers exclusively, 100% always come out of the MTEA as well, which is important to note. We don't subcontract anything. And we adhere to our own curriculum, and we train our staff to make sure that these programs are worthwhile. If we're going to collect money from our parents, we're going to make sure that they get their money's worth. Which is my segue to the other two programs that have gone live so far this winter, which is the Falcons Nest Summer Academy, which is already at 70% capacity.
Excellent.
And again, that is a $800 price point for a full summer of pre-K enrichment, and it's not daycare, it's enrichment. I want to be clear with that. We've also launched our K-2 program, which just went live a few days ago. We've had some enrollments. We haven't really promoted it yet, but we're confident that that is going to be kind of a popular option for our parents and guardians and community. These programs offer a staff discount to any staff member in the district, which is a nice give back to our community or our staff. And then I should report that our full body of courses to the rest of our students, grades 3 through 8th grade, will go live within the next couple of days on our website, which is separate from our current website, which is mtsde@monroe.k12.us. So that is our summer update, and we're excited. This is our 5th year.
So for the Falcons Nest and the kindergarten through 2nd grade enrichment programs, are we opening up outside our district? I know that we're allowing our staff member children to come, but besides that.
We
Just like
will.
other-
We have kind of a exclusivity period to our residents.
So we're in that
That we filed last year
exclusivity
to
till-
May 15th.
Maybe.
That doesn't apply to our staff, obviously.
Yeah.
And we are honoring any Jamesburg residents, that want to come.
Within that exclusivity. Right, okay.
And we met with Jamesburg. I know you're going to probably talk about this next week, but we met with Jamesburg a few days ago to make sure that they were fully briefed in these opportunities.
And we are advertising for these programs through our schools, flyers through school.
So far I've done a little social media presence, some direct Blackboard mail, and the principals have been popping it in the newsletter.
Okay, excellent. Sounds good. Any questions for Mr. Marolda?
No.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marolda.
So we can have Ms. Roldan and Ms. Rolla kind of give an update on our ESY program, so some of our other summer programming.
Yours.
So our ESY program this year is going to go from July 7th to August 7th again. We're going to have it run out of the high school and Oak Tree Elementary School again. And we'll be operating the same hours as we did last year. So 8 to 1 at the 8 to 12 at the high school, 9 to 1 at Oak Tree Elementary. So it makes it very convenient for our transportation. And last year, Mr. Maralda was kind enough to send some of his STEM teachers into our classrooms and allow them to teach our students lessons. So we're happy that we're going to get to continue that partnership. And
New supervisor?
yes, we have a new
Or
supervisor
supervisor.
coming, sorry.
So, right, so
It will be
doing the high school,
It will be moving to the high
going to
school.
high school, and our new supervisor coming on board, April, will be working in the elementary. So
Mr. Anjoni.
that's, we'll be able to come.
So no major changes compared to last
Nope.
year in the ESY.
Everything went very
We
smooth.
found our
so we're
group with the
trying to
high
stay the
school.
same.
It was a nice groove last year. actually.
Every year we get better at assimilating the two groups together. So last year we set up the ESY students joined us in setting up our school store. And unfortunately, the high school ESY students get a little bit more because of the facility. But it is more age appropriate, for example, we can bring them into the kitchen, we can bring them into the art room, which they can do at Oak Tree, they just don't have the kitchen, and they don't have those types of things. But we do our best to make them feel like they're part of everything that's going on in a productive way, and we're excited to have Ms. Roldan with us at the high school, so she can join the party.
Excellent. Any questions on the ESY program? I guess we are on to the last item on the agenda. Dr. Higgins, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm excited to go through this presentation. Thank you.
So you all have the presentation in the packet in front of you. Just a program note, if you don't need it, can you hand it back to me when we're done? Because I got to do this presentation again at 8 o'clock. This is a continuing conversation that we began, I believe, in December, when we brought the questions and the conversations about the honoring pupil achievement policy and regulation. Since that time, there has been ancillary conversations, there have been comments, there have been questions by the public and by the board, which is totally normal. And looking and taking a deeper dive into that policy, that regulation, kind of brought up some more questions about other policies and other regulations. So, in speaking with Dr. Chanley and speaking with, Dr. Lehman, there are a couple of things that we would like to make a recommendation, or I would like to make a recommendation to our policy committee and our board to update some of these regulations. I will stipulate that this is from a high school perspective. I know that when we looked at these regulations at the last time, there was a lot of questions about different levels within the district. I can only speak for what we do at the high school, what we would like to do at the high school, and where we think the changes need to be made. So the first topic that we look at is that policy 5440, which is encompassing honoring pupil achievement. The policy, which is fairly short, really only has 3 tenets in it that provide direction for the administration and the staff. The board will recognize outstanding students, and that really is grade level appropriate, honor roll, principals list, etc. The board will maintain membership in the National Honor Society, which we do, and they will follow the guidelines that the organization, the national organization selects, which we follow guidelines, but we adapt those guidelines within our school, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And that each graduating class will have a valedictorian and a salutatorian, which we do. And those students were actually just told that they were going to be valedictorian and salutatorian this year.
What a special day.
Halfway through the year, they were very happy. They knew it. They always know it.
They know before any staff.
Let me tell you something, the first time in a very long time, there was a major gap between 1, 2, and 3. Usually it comes down to like tenths of a point. This one was a whole point, maybe even more so, but very impressive. The students are very impressive. They have a very bright future ahead of them. So I'm looking forward to working with them and their speeches towards the end of the day. So we moved to the regulation for honoring pupil achievement. This is kind of where we got into the discussion. This was brought to our attention by a parent over the summer last year, and I think investigating, looking at the wording in this regulation, since that time, we discovered, and it was my opinion, which I brought to the committee, that I believe the regulation is incorrect. Since that time, we've realized that there may have been some updates maybe that were either partially done or that were just templates from Strauss-Esme that don't necessarily reflect what the school has done for the last 17 years as far as honoring pupil achievement. This is highlighted on the presentation because it is taken directly from what the current regulation says. And if you read that, to be eligible for the honor roll, it does start with pupils in grades 5 through 8, must achieve an overall average of 85 in all of the courses taken during the regularly scheduled school day. Only one course may have a grade in the 75% to 79 range. Students in grade 9 through 12, which is where the high school begins, must meet all of that criteria for all courses eligible in the high school credit. This may include courses taken outside of the regular school day. If a student receives a grade less than 75%, or if more than one grade is in 75 to 79 range, then the student is not eligible for the honor. My point here is that it's very wordy. Right? There's a lot going on in there. There's nothing that actually talks about the percentages between 80 and 85. And then if you look at the way our grades are levied at the high school, you can see, and that is regulation 2724, just as a footnote. There's no 85 even indicated. So the correlation between a lot of our regulations are kind of off, which is what I'm discovering as I'm looking at this this deeper. The other thing with the honor roll, and then we can look at the next slide too, which is principals list, which is where we get into more questions. It's eligible for principals list, the student in grades 5 through 8 again, must attain a grade of at least 90% in every course that they are taking during the regularly scheduled school day. Students in grade 9 through 12 must meet that criteria in all courses eligible for high school credit. This may include courses taken outside of the regular day. There's an additional stipulation in there that a grade of 85 or better in an honors course will also qualify for principals list. Now, this is a specific caveat in that regulation. Where I think we kind of got skewed in our discussion is we started to throw the word weighted in there. None of this has to do with weighted grades. Weighted grades, and I'll get into that when we talk about class rank. Weighted grades are calculated when a student gets to senior year and we calculate GPA for class rank. And if you look at the regulation or policy, that's the only time it's calculated. Honor roll and principals list are based on marking period grades only. And marking period grades are not weighted. If a student in whatever level class they have, whether it is college prep, honors, or AP, if they earn an 85, an 85 goes on the report card. When they graduate, that 85 in an AP class is weighted to a 95 for their GPA. And that's the only time that happens. So if you get an 85 in a class, it goes on your report card as an 85. So this part, the caveat of a grade of 85 or better in honors courses is not something that is practiced at the high school. We have never practiced this in the 17 years that we've been honoring these students.
That's my fault.
There have been comments that the high school is looking to take things away from students. We're not looking to take away anything. It's the same thing that has been for every student for the last 17 years. Yes, it is not congruent with what is in the regulation. If we followed the regulation to the letter of what it says, that means honor roll students on the principal's list in honors classes would get an advantage over students in AP classes, because AP is not even referred to in this. What we've discovered, there was a couple of comments that maybe we didn't have enough AP classes at the time. At the time that this was turned over, 2008, 2009, we had 19 AP courses in
I
high
asked
school.
you to check.
So it was pretty significant. What we have determined, or what we think happened, was an update to this regulation was the template from Strauss-Esme, and that's how it's written, in the template from Strauss-Esme, even though the school did it differently, or does it differently, okay? So I do have a couple of questions there. Why is it written different? That, it's written different than honors. I think honors is very, very wordy, the way it's written. I understand why it's written that way, but I think it could be written a little bit more simpler. And I really think that we need to remove that term weighted out of all of this discussion, because it's not even in there yet. We kind of inserted that into the discussion. If you look at the next slide, I do have recommendations for the high school that would go to, I'm guessing would go to.
I just want you to repeat one thing, because I think it's important.
Sure.
Can you repeat that the per marking period grades, well, I'm repeating it for you, the marking period grades that are utilized for honor roll and principals lists are not weighted.
That's
I
correct.
just want to make that, because I think a lot of people, they're not weighted.
They're not weighted, no. it's
Right, so-
40%, right.
Right, so then when we look at the 85%, that brings in the conversation of weighting, because that's a form of weighting, right?
It's formal, but not technically, but
Right.
yes, it's
Right.
in some sort
So
of.
I think as you continue on, and then of course we'll have the conversation, but I also want to say, because I know statements are thrown around constantly about us not following policy, to the best of our ability, we follow all policy and regulations. If a policy or regulation, for whatever reason, has not been followed, we would not know we are not following it, because in the words of our attorney who spoke with me, we have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of policies, and we are always looking to do what is appropriate and follow the policy. If something got by in the last 17 years, which means the last 8 to 9 superintendents, were not following this policy with no intent. There was no intent or malice or forethought. It was something we didn't know we were doing it until it was brought up. I just wanted to make that statement because of the last.
So in addition to
Comment.
that,
board meeting.
I totally agree. In addition to that,
Thank
policy is also something that is learned. It's almost a learned behavior. There are hundreds of policies. As a vice principal in this school for 11 years, you learn policies in the way they are, and then 5 years after you become the principal, you learn that maybe there's something slightly off on that.
Thank you.
We don't, I did not get this job and inspect every policy word for word.
But no,
And then we kind of learn as we go along. I will show you that in the next couple slides. There's another regulation that we don't follow 100% that I would also recommend to the policy committee that we change. That would actually benefit the student body and the school as a whole. But on this slide, it would be my recommendation to the policy committee. It is what is current practice at this high school and is in step with other schools in the district. I do have a link that I can show to you if you want. It's kind of rudimentary about what other schools do in our surrounding areas. But my recommendation would be for the honor roll at the high school, and this is the high school. Students in grade 9 through 12 must achieve an average of an overall 85%. It's the way it is right now. One grade can fall between 75 and 79. The reason for that is if you have someone that has all 90s and they have 7 90s and they have 179, that student could still get into the honor roll because their average would be over 85. So it is giving back a little bit in that area. The principals list, and this is the way we do it in every school that I've talked to in Middlesex and Monmouth County, does it the same exact way. If they have a principals list, there's a couple schools that don't even have a principals list. Students in grades 9 through 12 must achieve an average of 90%. All grades must be 90 or higher. And that is based upon marking period grades, which are not weighted, which I explained before. There are a couple schools that I talked to that do not do any of this. They don't rank their students. They don't publish rank. They don't honor students with honor rolls or principals lists, or those are kind of outliers. Most of the schools that do all of this, and yes, I know I just said do, sorry. The ones that do this, they all follow this principals list, with the exception of one school that this is actually their honor roll. Their honor roll is 90 above, and principals list they have to be nominated to actually be on the principals.
That's different.
Which is something I really don't want to talk about. But this was my recommendation originally. It continues to be my recommendation. Obviously, whatever happens, the regulation that is in there right now needs to be addressed because
100%.
even if this recommendation is not followed, the way it's written right now, it's just so chopped up.
And the policy committee will be working on it. But I have a question for you at this point, based on what you're recommending and what is worded right now in the policy, right? If we go back to that page.
You actually have the policy in that packet too, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I left the policy, the regulation are in the packet.
Yeah, no.
At the end.
So the way it is currently, it says honors classes 85 and over should be in the principal's list. And it's not being done that way in the high school. I'm not talking about weighted, because I know that takes an extra effort to do that calculation every marking period. But for the kids taking AP and honors, we are making that concession in elementary, in middle school, where they're getting the credit for taking a harder rigor class. I want to understand, and I know I've heard it, all schools are doing it this way. But what is wrong in giving the benefit of that harder rigor to those children that are taking AP and honors to get them in the principal's list at 85? I'm not talking weighted, I'm talking, the actual whole number 85.
So
What's wrong with that?
I can give you, we could talk about my perspective for many hours, all right? And it's this perspective of taking a class to learn or taking a class for a number or a grade. Are students taking a class because they know at the end that they can get an 80 and it's going to be a 90? Are they taking a class just so they can get a bump and get on a principal's list? And that's going to go on an application too? Or are they taking an honors level class because that is where they're learning a couple?
Bless you, thank you.
Or they're taking an AP class because that's where their learning abilities lie. And in the same respect, this is one of the reasons why we've made so many adjustments to our waiver program, is because you have students that are getting in over their head. You have students that are taking these higher level classes for maybe extrinsic reasons instead of intrinsic reasons, and they are falling on their face, right? They are getting into problems, which then we talk about even mental health aspects of them. So I do understand where your perspective comes from, and it's definitely a conversation. Like I said, this is a recommendation, but if you have a student who is taking an honors level class, they should be able to do honors level work. And if you have a student that's taking an AP class, so on and so forth.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I am also with you on the whole process that we put in on the waiver, because you're right, the extrinsic and intrinsic factors are important. And hopefully all of these kids taking these higher rigor classes now are ones that are capable of taking it and have the teacher recommendation to take it. Now we only have a few outliers that will weigh in. These classes, as a parent, when I've been in the back to school night, the expectation is set straight. Don't expect your child to get a 90. Those are things that are said at back to school night, Dr. Higgins, by teachers. And I don't have any disrespect for the teacher. I get it. The child is taking a high rigor class. The child is probably used to getting hundreds all this time, but now you're taking a class where it's not so easy to get 100. You're probably not going to get 100, but you're learning harder material. So that's the other aspect of looking at this. I understand what you said, but this is the other aspect where they're working harder, learning harder material, and it's probably not going, that kid was getting 100 in ELA, but it's probably going to get an 89 or a 90. But the kid is not going to make the principal's list versus the friend that took the ELA class is going to make the principal's list. I feel like when you talk about mental health, I would look at it this way.
Yeah.
You know what, we're having a negative impact.
I totally agree with that. Number one, no teacher should ever say that
Yeah,
about
it's
school
terrible.
night, right? So
We, in
And
our
I'm
buildings, in our
honestly-
task force.
I remember when I was a teacher, I would tell kids that they were gonna write until their hands fell off and, they would get scared about taking your class.
No disrespect, they're prepping the kids for hard work.
Yep, I understand what you're saying. I do agree with what you're saying. I think we also, when we're talking about these regulations, we also have to think about the masses of students and not just specific individual cases. And if someone is, to your specific point, right, if you have one kid whose friend is getting a grade and not getting a grade in a different, talking about very specific cases.
No, I'm trying to make a broad case
Yeah,
here. I'm
no, I
not
think-
talking about one or two people. I'm talking about the larger majority. While our report cards are marking period whole numbers, these kids start doing weighted averages. You just said, right? They knew this. We found out today.
Yeah.
They've known this since junior year that they're ramping up to be, they're only looking at their weighted numbers, right?
And all of those students are in honors and AP classes, because I would never be able to figure it out.
All of these honors and AP students are just looking at their weighted.
So there's another aspect to this too. And I know that it's been talked about before, and it's kind of an uncomfortable aspect to talk about. I'm gonna use terminology that's probably not, PC enough, but when you have a program that you kind of start watering down, then the program does not look like it should. You can talk to counselors from the college level, and they're looking at the classes you take, honors, AP, they're looking at the grades that you get in those classes. They're not looking at weighted grades, they're not looking at principals list, they're not looking at honor roll. So when you get an application from a student, you've been on the principal's list for 7 semesters, and you have a bunch of 80s, someone's gonna look at that and say, well, either the kid's lying or the school's not that tough. So there is another aspect to that, and I know it's an uncomfortable aspect to talk about.
No, it's good, it's a good.
But that is definitely an aspect. When I say something like this is what the other high schools do, I don't necessarily think that we should do what everybody else does. As a matter of fact, I am a firm believer that high schools should be looking at us to say, this is what Monroe does. However, the reason why other schools do it that way is for a specific reason. It's because when these students are going to college, this is what those acceptances are being looked at. So there is definitely that aspect.
Yeah, I wouldn't think of it as watering down, but I get your point. There's a benchmark set for that. The term principal means this, and if we do any less, we will be watering.
And I wish the colleges sent that out and said, this is what we want the principal's list to look like, and this is what we want honor roll to look like.
They don't, you're right.
Even with course requirements and even with what students take in high school, Colleges vary slightly, so they're not going to say you must have 3 years of a world language. They're gonna say this is what the competitive colleges want. The really hard colleges want 4 years. So there's definitely going to be different levels than that. When we're talking about academics, and getting into college. So there's definitely there's that aspect.
Yeah, Charlie, sorry, go ahead. I just want to, I have to agree very much with what you said, Dr. Snyder. And I do because when I worked in Chester, we had a mean IQ of about 118. And many of our kids were bored, in the classes they were taking. So we came up with a program that was a combination of enrichment and acceleration. This was an area of math. And so kids, by the time, and we didn't identify a lot of kids in the earlier levels. We started programming in grade 2, believe it or not, but eventually we eliminated went to grade 3. We didn't get a lot of kids. But we started, as we started to move up, the numbers started to increase. So by the time we got in the 7th grade, we had our population. Now, the problem, the reason we put this together the way we did, because we need a curriculum that was commensurate with the student's ability. That's what kids want. Kids want to be challenged. We identify that, we recognize that, and we were doing kids a great disservice by not making the curriculum tough. And so when the kids start, and I charted this, they start at grade 5 and then 6, and the way it was, the 90%, by the time they reach high school and they're in these accelerated classes, and they have this unique ability because they're in those accelerated classes, because they're able to think higher level, they're able to come up quicker with solutions. Some of them don't even know why. They're just very, very sharp. And they have a profile that indicates how incredibly bright these kids are. And if we're saying that is true, which it is, and all the research will support it, then well, our expectations for them should be the same as it is for kids who scored to 90%. It should be across the board, especially when they get into high school. That's why, everything you're saying is how I sold the program. I mean,
If I was to put a counter argument, why are we reporting weighted averages for our class ranks and for college applications? Why are we weighting it at that point then? The same logic.
No, at the end.
At the end, weighted.
And Ms. Bora, that's another great conversation we could have for a very long time, the
So,
difference between.
no, I was
ranks
just
and
making a
rank.
point to what Charlie said, that we should always hold them up to that standard, right? But end of the day, a valedictorian is.
Baseball weighted.
It's all his weighted grades. You're not taking the real numbers, you're weighting them up. When they report to colleges and their applications, it's the weighted GPA. So end of the day, they are getting the benefit of taking those harder rigor classes. And my conversation was, why is it different just for principals then? And I get, the only thing that's speaking out to me right now is when Dr. Higgins said, this is a benchmark. It's like the standard of the school, and all schools have the standard. And if we change our standards and we're watering down that measure.
I agree with that concept of watering it down.
Right, off the
I think
measure.
we are. I mean, if you lower the standard, you're gonna water it down, and what's gonna happen is that the program is not going to offer what it really should.
You don't want to lose the academic integrity that's behind
Right.
these programs.
Right.
Right, I think that's the most important thing that we want to take away from this is you want to be able to, those students are taking those higher rigor courses, right? And while, we want to try to give them a little bit of leeway to be able to earn that principal's list honor, it also becomes a learning experience, right? You do know that you're taking a higher rigor course and it's going to be harder to obtain that principal's list, but putting in your effort and, doing what you can do, earning honor roll is also just as acceptable. And I think that's also a life lesson that our students will have to learn as well.
It is, I guess. Dr. Higgins, you were saying something?
I was thinking of something, but I'm not 100% sure that I'm right, so I'm not gonna talk about it.
I wanted to make a comment real quick to what Dr. Chanley said about having so many policies and it's hard to, we overlook them at times. And as the policy chair, I remember this coming before us in May of 2024.
It did come.
And
before
then
us.
it like, no, it wasn't brought to our attention that it was incorrect at that time. So I think overall, we need to do a better job of looking at these policies when they do come before us.
And
Because
that's
it hasn't
very
been 17 years, it was just last May.
Now it's been almost a year.
Yeah, but the time it last May, the reason why it didn't come further, that was the first time. I think the point of what I wanted to say respectfully is that, for 17 years, under 8 different superintendents, this policy has not been followed properly at the high school.
Yeah.
And now as the
Regulation.
superintendent,
Regulation was done.
the regulation.
Regulation.
Now as the superintendent, I bear the responsibility. In May, when it came to us, we wanted to work, and I know that Dr. Lehman was working directly with Dr. Higgins. And I think that it's taken all these months because of this disparity in the thought process. So we respect the Board of Education, because the one thing that you do have say over is policy, and I'm very respectful of that. And we had a pre-meeting, a post-meeting, and an in-between meeting, because my feeling is I can go either way. I feel very strongly, but the comment that I made was just because for those people that do watch the video and have an understanding, in public forum, an individual basically said that we weren't following policy, we don't do what we're supposed to do, and I wanted to get heard that that is not true. We do a good job of following policy. It's very important. Policy regulates everything, but can something be overlooked for 17 years under 8 different administrations? Yes. But I do agree, as the point of this moving on, I agree wholeheartedly, I have to say, with Charles regarding academic rigor. To me, and then I'm gonna give you the flip side, but to me, if you are I'm gonna use the word brighter, I'm probably not politically correct either. If you're a brighter student, you take a harder class because you have the ability to take the harder class. So the expectation of the 90 should be the same of the student who's taking a different class because their ability is different. I agree with that 100%. My concern, where I agree with Ghazala, is that I don't like to do things one way in one area and one way in another. So we don't wait, which I understand, we don't wait every marking period. So, but we do in the end. So this is what she's trying to say.
For GPA.
For GPA. So at the very, very end, when everybody's said done and the kid's been here for 4 years, they walk out of here with the accolades of having this weighted, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with either, that's a separate conversation, of having this weighted, and then being able to say, here's my, everybody wants to be number 1 through 20, okay, whatever it is. Everybody wants to be 1 and 2, but if you're not 1 or 2, you want to be 20 or above. The 20 top students. But then, to Ghazala's point, how is that fair? There is no parity, because even though you're saying, and I believe I'm not sure, I know one of the supervisors made the comment, that honor roll doesn't count. Respectfully, honor roll and principals list, we have to make the assumption, because we're not the colleges, is another accolade. So I think the lack of fairness, because I do agree completely. I do agree. To me, you're smarter, get the 90, although that's where you belong. But then when you look at the accolade, you turn around and say, okay, I worked really hard. I got an 87 or an 88. I worked super hard. I did a great job. I'm very, very bright. I took all the classes I should. I was appropriately placed in the high level classes. And maybe the colleges don't care, but I care. I was number 4, but I didn't make principals list. So there is that disparity. That's what
Disparity is what is.
That's what my
competition
concern
here,
is.
not-
Although I agree 100%, and I've said this before.
No.
I agree 100% that to me,
And I
you're
do-
brighter, you belong in the smarter class, and you
not a
belong
squad
getting a higher grade.
So if I can add to this conversation a little bit with my next couple slides, if.
Yes,
I'm okay
yes,
with
yes,
all of it.
please, yes.
So within looking at a lot of these facets, I did a deeper dive into our class rank policy, right? And this is where the weighted and unweighted comes in. So the board policy basically just says that there has to be a system of ranking by grade point average for pupils in grade 12. It's calculated by the final grade in all subjects. Weighted credit will be calculated for grades earned in honors courses, of course, independent study, et cetera, et cetera. And the minimum credits that are allowed. Now, what we all know, or what we have learned as weighted grades are, for honors classes, you get 8 points.
Yes.
For
8,
AP
you get
classes,
10.
You get 10.
you get 10. According to the regulation, that's not necessarily true. So I looked at the regulation,
Mhm.
and the regulation only indicates
On
8 points for honors courses in the 5 content areas. So
Oh,
not
this is
business,
what he's gonna say,
not music,
the electives.
not visual or performing arts.
It's not updated. It's not.
So any student who took honors business management, or honors business org, or honors marketing, or honors percussion should not have 8 points added to that grade.
And they have been getting them.
And they have been for the last X number of years.
That's a good way to show that.
So- so- I just want to show that we're not trying to take anything away from anyone. It is my recommendation that the policy committee change that, and all honors classes be given 8 points, and all AP courses be given.
And there's no mention of AP here, right? Is there?
No.
In the class rank there is. So in the class rank,
There is?
regulation 5430,
Okay.
honors level courses in language arts, world language, mathematics, science, history receive 8 points. French 4 and 5, Spanish 4 and 5 also receive additional 8 points. All advanced placement courses receive 10 extra points. So this may have been written before we added certain honors courses like business and percussion and piano that we just added. So our regulation was not necessarily updated. Again, kind of hammering home the idea that we may not be updating these regulations appropriately or over the last couple of years. And what we learned as policy and regulation has kind of been trickling down year to year, that you take an honors class, you get 8 points. You take a AP class, you get 10 points. If we were following the regulation, then all of those students that graduated the past couple of years, their GPAs are wrong.
To be fair, right, we obviously don't know which policies, I mean, we know policies are being followed.
Policies
Right.
are
But
followed.
we also don't know what policies aren't being followed
It only comes out when
necessarily
it comes
until
out.
when
Right.
Correct.
somebody notices that
Correct.
a policy is not being followed.
But at that point, we make corrections.
Right. and that's-
Immediately, yes.
And I guess that's kind of the point where I'm at right now is what our policy states
Is wrong.
is not wrong.
It's
Well,
not
it's not what we're following.
It's not what
So I
we.
think it's very
But
important.
we don't want to take it.
to
But
think
we,
about
right,
following
don't want
the
to,
policy.
but, yeah, but
We might not be following the regulation
we're following
congruently,
policy.
but the
we're not
policy we're
following
following.
Oh, thank you for saying that. So what we need to do now, to your point, Ms. Fabian, I agree 100%, is what are we gonna do now? So now we know what we know, right? Every time we find out something that perhaps we weren't following to the letter of the law, what do? Once we find out, we correct it. So now the question is, do we go with the recommendation of making this very wordy? Definitely changing the wording,
No, I like
Very-
the,
very wordy? Or, and where does, it's all about the principals list with the 85. Now, at the middle school, because I have my notes here also, at the middle school, and they don't do any weighting of any kind, at any marking period or at the end, there is no weighting, except if you take, and right now we do have English, and we will have science, but we've always had math. If you got an 85 in geometry in the 8th grade, and you got 90 everywhere else, you made principals list. That is the way it's written. So I do agree, and I believe Charles said it last time, and I do agree, if we're gonna make a change, I like the consistency. With the language and the consistency, and even the spirit should be the same, 6 through 12. Elementary is a very different, it is very different, I agree, but 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, you're moving on to high school, we're getting them ready, we do the same thing with attendance. So whatever changes are decided upon, whatever recommendations, I do think if we're gonna change it there, then that means if you don't get, if we, let's say we stick to Dr. Higgins' recommendation, that means in the middle school, it would be changed. 90 across the board, regardless of the level of the class, whether it be English, math, or now we're gonna have science. So I do think that's very important. And I know you brought it up last time when we were on Zoom, so I wanted to reference that.
so the draft that we were given, it was part of our executive attachment, is not,
So the
does
draft,
not have the verbiage that Dr. Higgins is.
so what we looked at last time?
All right, so that's not changing at
No.
all. That has the words weighted or unweighted in it. which
Right,
is-
so we can adjust. So what I wanted to do was see where the high school landed, see where we were gonna go with the high school, because we did talk about consistency.
With the middle school.
Bring it up.
Okay,
We have flexibility and they're open at the elementary and middle school to adapt to potentially where the high school is gonna land, but they didn't want to commit to it until we knew where the high school was gonna go. So that's why you didn't see a change
I would want
in the
to,
elementary and middle as well. because we have to solidify this to then kind of go back down to that.
I will want to agree with what Ms. Fabiano said at that, in the last meeting, where we keep it consistent. Like we're building them up for getting used to a concession and then taking it.
Elementary, we could really definitely view, because elementary really is,
Great.
elementary, what are
That's the only grade that.
Only they have, right?
Cards are changing.
Do they also have that?
So it's
Fifth
fifth grade 5.
Okay.
They don't.
That's grade 5.
Fourth grade, and the caveat was, for accelerated math. And it was a 10-point piece, then a 5-point piece at the middle school, and then.
I could almost feel like maybe at the elementary, the 5th grade, we do a 5-point, not a 10, and then at the middle school, we do nothing in preparation for the high school, if that's the route we go. If that's the route we go, or we could be completely consistent. I know that elementary, the children, there is a difference there, you know, we know socio-emotional growth, we know how it works with
They don't, I don't know.
a different
I feel
philosophy.
in elementary school, principals and honor roll don't really mean much to it.
But we,
But I mean, like, you know, like, it's more, parents appreciate the honor.
I mean, we could do a 5-point instead of a 10, that's a change, and then 6 through 12 do nothing if that's what we decide. Or we could turn around and say, we're not in agreement at all, and the recommendation is leave the policy as it is and clean it up. That's the other recommendation, is leave it as it is, but it's got to be cleaned up.
Yeah, but other top rank issues, so we can't leave that.
No, well, that's easy, we'll just make that 8 and 10 like what it should be. And we have to, that's the other thing is, who's to say an honors, we have some honors business courses, the rigor is incredible, equal to perhaps an honors class that may be a core content area. So would we want to not give it the 8 points or the 10 points? Because I'm just picking up honors business because I know we have some very rigorous honors business. Right. So then we would need the language to say all honors and AP classes. We wouldn't specify French or math or science and English. We take out the specificity and make it all.
What grade we including middle school in this?
Yeah, middle school, the only thing you have to worry about is just,
It's only high school.
there's only high school.
Yeah, because with middle school philosophy is somewhat different.
Oh, 100%.
It's a different world. When you get in high school, everything shifts there.
No,
So we want to be careful with what we do in middle.
it's not applicable in the middle school.
No,
Twelve.
not at all.
No, it's not applicable at
I
all.
don't
Like,
think, I don't think it is.
no, I mean, it's not, grades are not applicable. It's only principals list. We don't have to worry.
Right.
There's just
I
one
feel
thing
like
I want to bring
Yes.
up in terms of middle school and the advanced classes.
Yeah, English.
We start looking at kids potentially not being properly placed if they're below an 85. So
Oh.
we want to watch some of that ranking.
Okay.
We start to relook at their writing samples internally.
Right.
We look at their assessment grades. So that's my only hesitation of saying, like, if we're adding 10 points or we're doing something.
No, the middle
like
school, I
that-
wanted to add no points.
Oh, you wanted to add the no points?
Which would work with what you're saying.
That's fine.
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to bring that up.
No,
now because
no
I'm looking for
waiting.
someone to
No
get
waiting.
that, and then
Wait,
you're-
it's not there.
No, middle school, you have nothing to worry about. All
No,
we have to worry about in middle school is principals list only.
It's only
Yeah,
a principal's
fine.
list
That's it.
conversation. There's no
There's no
weighted
weighting.
grading in middle
Middle
school.
school.
No.
But I'm saying for fifth grade as well.
Yeah, we said
Because
that.
the math.
Yeah, we said that, 5th grade math.
Just for
Did you
math.
say fifth grade
But
was
now we
at
should
10
take care of.
5th grade, they say it's 10 points, so we have to look at
But
that.
that would make somebody who would be too overwhelmed in the accelerated math to continue, end up with principal's list.
That's current, that's the.
That's the current policy, regulation.
Right.
So maybe we should change that.
Agree with?
Your grade should be your grade.
Yes,
That's
so
my opinion. Your
I
grade
feel
should be
like
your grade.
let's keep it consistent.
The grade that
true,
you
not
earn
that I-
on your assessment and what shows up on your report card is the
That's your
grade
grade.
that you earn.
What we're saying is that if you are in a higher rigor of process, it's harder for you to make the principal's list. And you should accept that fact across all the.
Yes, the
Yes.
children,
Right.
students should accept that.
Yeah,
To
so
know
that, whether or not I like saying it, that's the consensus that this committee is coming to, that if you're taking a high rigor of classes, you're not going to get the benefit of that to, make it into the principal.
It's the learning versus the grade. It's the like he said, the intrinsic versus the extrinsic.
I do want to give you the opportunity, Dr. Higgins, to finish the presentation.
Yeah.
So I will
That's
just,
important
I'll be very quick on this. This is not something that we have to go into.
Oh, National Honor
detail.
Society is
We
a
can
whole
bring this
other-
back. I know that this was something that somebody wanted to talk about tonight. This was not part of the original presentation, but it was.
But it is part of the policy, the regulation.
Just went through my policy regulation rabbit hole for the past couple of weeks. We do have a National Honor Society at the high school. The policy says that we are to follow guidelines from the national
Yes.
organization. We do have our national organization affiliation. We are the National Honor Society. We have we have requirements that are quote unquote easier than the National Honor Society, regulations.
Why?
How is that allowed? Why?
It was actually easier, and we changed a couple of years
Well, it should
ago.
follow if you're national, you're supposed to follow theirs identical.
So the way that we admit juniors after their first semester or seniors after the first mark period is if they have a weighted 90. So we use their weighted grade for this because we can calculate
That
if
was
they
my
become
point.
seniors. This differs from the National Honor Society
We need to
standards.
change that back.
The National Honor Society standards do not use weighted grades, and they require a 3.75 or what is a 92.5 not weighted.
So why
So
are we doing?
that's the standard requirement.
Right.
Why did we water it down here?
And do you know when?
I think if you look back at, the class rank, the title of the section for class rank is called Academic Incentive Programs. I believe all of these were kind of instituted in a time when Monroe did not have a lot of honors and AP courses, and they were incentivizing students to take these classes. You may have had a National Honor Society with 15 kids in it, so they were incentivizing kids to be in the National Honor Society. I think next year we are gonna have like 375 kids in the National Honor Society,
That is crazy.
which is twice,
Does
which
that
is
look-
more than half of the senior class. Which again, doesn't really look good if you have that many students in your National Honor
And
Society.
it's not just doesn't look good, it's not accurate. It should be, because if it's a national honor society,
Maybe
you
not.
have to follow national law.
I think that's okay.
This is not the right order, like we're.
So for purposes, because we're coming to an end, we can, if what we're hearing is that we're gonna go with what Dr. Higgins is saying, clean it completely up. So it's bang, bang, bang,
Yes.
regulation, policy, making sure middle school and elementary. My suggestion about elementary, because it's only math, is either we say no points of any kind, so your grade is your grade, even in accelerated math, or we don't give them 10, because that's, I think, ridiculous.
Can I just confirm something because we are running out of time?
Yes.
The recommendation that is 3.75
should do.
GPA or 92.5.
Unweighted.
Is the standard.
That's
for
actually not
national-
my recommendation, but we can go with that.
That's the standard of the National Honor
That's
Society,
National Honor Society.
national chapter. And we're currently not following that.
Correct.
So my recommendation would be that
Follow
we
the-
align to the national chapter.
Follows the letter of the law.
But this would, I'm reading your last line here, it would begin with the class of 2020.
That was what we were thinking. Anyone in the high school now.
Is
would
there
fall
already
under
that
that.
there? Wouldn't be.
Not fair. I like that.
Students coming in next year would have a new requirement of that
But-
3.7. But
The freshman, it doesn't, I know that as you're getting closer to junior year, you're working towards it, but could we apply to the class of 2028?
we could apply it to the class of 2026 if you want.
We could do anything.
Now, but let's be fair, let's think it through.
Absolutely, that's
Let's
fine.
think it through. So the next class, the current class right now is the class of,
25.
20.
no, I know that, but there's the class of high school. What's high school graduating class? 28.
So this is the freshman right now or
The
20?
freshman is.
No, the freshmen you have are already in school.
Right.
No, so 29, so I don't know if we should do it to the freshmen that are here because they have different expectations.
28.
28.
So,
But the current eighth grade is class of 2029.
yes, yes.
That's what I wanted to say.
Which is what he's trying to.
I didn't know it was 2025.
Trying to start
Again,
fresh.
this is not something we
next
have
year.
to decide tonight.
No, I
Well,
think
the
we should.
reason, Dr. Higgins, is
We
that
should
when the
decide.
policy committee takes up regulation
I agree
5440,
with talking
they're not gonna deal with it piecemeal.
Yep.
No.
They need to
We
put
can
every
change the whole
part of
thing.
it, which is middle
So
school, high
do you think
school,
class of
and-
2029 is appropriate? That means only the current eighth graders are affected by the policy changes because it takes them 4 years to go through it.
I
We
mean,
are
I
old.
like the idea of a fresh start,
Yeah.
like starting, like not
Okay.
taking the freshmen.
And then the other thing is we just have to talk about the elementary. So, recommendation, we don't have any elementary principals here.
We can touch base with them.
Well, it's gonna be first read anyway.
Yeah, so we'll touch base with them and see, because I definitely think
It
10
looks like
points
you're
is.
gonna have to do some work, which is work in secondary.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are a lot of students in the program. They can find probably the far majority, right?
so it really would not be affecting in a negative way for most of the
But
students.
that's a few,
A few.
but I can get to that value.
Yeah.
And she's saying that the majority of students in the elementary school will already get 90s.
But it's not.
So if we go to 90 like everybody, because I think it's grade
In the fifth grade.
Okay, this is.
Fifth grade math is learning sixth grade, which is still an elementary program. The sixth grade is learning seventh and eighth combined, so they go up a level, but it's not the same. The level of rigor gets a little bit harder each time.
Right, and then the middle
We're
school
not
elementary.
killing them in the fifth grade, but it is rigorous.
So the middle school and elementary shouldn't be for this year. because they're already there. It should be for the children starting next year.
Next year.
And then
And
the
that's
2021. Right.
And I would be okay with that. I mean, that's your.
That's only downstairs.
I like that. I think that sounds fair too.
So
March,
I don't
mid-March.
know.
No, senior.
And make it effective.
No, it'll be effective, no, what we'll do is, I like what he wrote, effective with class up, effective, right, that'll work, yeah. Okay, this was great, this was
The
great.
only
news.
conversation that we ran out of time,
If anybody else doesn't-
Yes,
was, thank you, everybody. The only conversation we ran out of time was middle school.
and I did want to research Andy too.
We would have to.
And just so you, in the middle school honor society, it's not done in our neighboring districts, and it's not.
So we would have to have that conversation.
Found out the obese program doesn't do itself. Oh, we will.
Are we still live? Thank you, everyone. We are over time and switching.